wonderful experience, just learning and getting motivated. You know, because this is, as you said, this is not an easy task. It's not a quick task. In today's society, we are accustomed to doing things quick, fast, and in a hurry. That's not how this works. That is not how this works. And I think I started years ago, probably in the 90s as well, and then stopped, life kind of intervened, but then I've picked things up again. And I think initially, as one of the earlier speakers, Dr. Allen said, when I was a child, I would listen in on the grown folks. The grown folks would want you to go and do children's things, stay out of grown folks' business, but I might go around the corner and listen. Now, we have a lot of folks in our family who were born here, but then migrated north, Indianapolis, Detroit, Niagara Falls, but they would come back home. And when they would come to visit, I would listen to the stories. Because we had adventurers, we had comedians, we had people who loved to talk and loved to share, and I was listening. And that, I think, as a child, that's how I sort of got interested in learning more about my family. There's one person whose name kept coming up on the Gibson side of the family. And that is the person that I'm going to start with a little bit, and then I'm going to also talk about some of the resources that I have used to learn more about her. But her name was Rachel Causey Gibson.
And that's Gibson with a B.
With a B. With a B.
With a B?
Yes, with a B. Yes. She's yours too? Okay. There is conflicting information in the census and in the local information that I pulled on Rachel. The local information pegs her as having been born in 1845. The census that I looked at, I believe I looked back again at the 1900 census, said that she was born in 1850. But the family lore is that she was 114 when she died in 1959. So I'm going to go with the 1845 date. It's interesting. You never know when your family is going to come up. A few years after I moved back to Cedartown, I refinanced my house. And so when I went to the closing attorney's office to finalize the paperwork, he brought up Rachel Causey Gibson. That was just amazing to me. I know that when you do a closing, the attorneys have to research the deed information and see who owned it, and make sure that there's clear title, blah, blah, blah. So I figured out that he was asking me, did I know Rachel Gibson, because her name had been on some of the documents, that documents of ownership up until her death in 1959. So anyway, I had an opportunity to share some of the interesting, funny stories about Rachel when I was sitting there at the closing. But it's just interesting how you never know when your family members are going to come up. Now, as I said, Rachel was born in 1845. I do believe that she was an enslaved person. She eventually married Harry Gibson, Gibson, of Polk County, and they had several children to include my grandfather, Charlie Gibson, with a B. Everybody's a B up until my dad went into the military. Rachel and Harry, as I said, had several children. One of them was my grandfather. Another was Lawson Gibson, who is the father of one of his children is Harriet Brown, my cousin, who has also dived deeply into the research phase of this. And she had hoped to be here virtually, but she's not here. But I will be sharing some information that she shared with me regarding how the B became a P. So, as I said, Rachel and Harry had several children, and they settled here in Cedartown, south of town. And that's actually where I live right now. I live in the house that Rachel was living in at the time of her death. No, I don't. I live on the property where the house stood at the time of her death.
Was that intentional, or did it just kind of happen?
What do you mean? Was what intentional?
You buying that property? Or
I didn't buy that property. That property has remained in our family.
Okay. Yeah. So you already knew that.
I already knew that. That property has been in our family, and then when she died, it passed to her son Charlie, because the rest of the property that my great grandparents had already been given to their other children, and she kept what I found really interesting. She kept what is called a life estate for the period of her remaining life, and then passed her portion on to her son Charlie. I found this as part of my family research that I want to share with you and encourage you on, is talking to our elders and looking at the papers that they kept regarding what we owned and where we were and what we did. A lot of times the paperwork, deed records, wills, any kind of paperwork, mortgage information, banking information, those things were kept at home because things would disappear when you filed them officially. And people would end up without their property that they had worked for and bought and spent their blood, sweat, and tears getting for their families. So families knew to keep the important documents safe in their homes. I've been able to find deeds, I've been able to find wills, I've been able to find mortgage payments, mortgage papers, I've been able to find paid off information from banks. So be sure that you look at home and find the information that your folks that your ancestors kept and kept safe for you. But another thing that I want to talk about a little bit is some of the lore that has been passed down in our family about Rachel and Harry. As I said, Rachel and Harry had several children, to include Charlie, who was my grandfather, and Charlie married Maddie Lou Pollard Gibson, and they had children, to include my dad, who was Charlie Gibson. Charlie Gibson was with the B all the way up until the time he went into the military. He graduated from Cedar Hill in, I believe it was 1948, and then went to Albany State College. And at Albany State College, he graduated from Albany and then went into the Army. And it was at that time that the B became a P. And because I remember asking my father, how is it that all of these relatives that we have here spell their name Gibson, and we spell our name Gipson? And he told me that it was changed for him in the military. And that is consistent with a lot of information that I have read about our folks and about record keeping regarding Black people. Your name might get spelled any kind of way. The record keeper wanted it to be spelled. The dates of birth, the other information about your family that's in our official government records might be changed or might be left out, might have been left out by the official record takers. So that's why I think it is important to talk to our family members, to get those documents, to find out what actually happened, and go from there. And yes, we have the tools of the census, Yes, we have the tools of military records. Yes, we can pull up somebody's DD-214, all of those pieces of paper, but there's nothing like the discussions that are had in our families. And it's very important that we continue with those discussions, and it's very important that we value those discussions and that information that is shared family-wide. But anyway, my dad told me that his name was changed in the military by the military, and everything that I've been able to pull substantiates that. I see that in the census records and in the school records, there was a B in his name up until the time he went into the military. And that is consistent with what I believe that Harriet was going to share with us today. And I'm going to read something that she posted on our Gibson family website regarding that particular issue. Someone asked the question about the B to the P, and let me pull up the answer. The question was, why Gibson is spelled Gipson also? Just curious. And her answer, as I said, Harriet has been doing a lot of research for many years, longer than I have. But basically, I'm going to read you what she said. She said, just some of the reasons. In the late 1700s, some of the freed slaves did not attend school, so they did not know how to spell their names. A lot of them signed with an X. Some of the men, when they went into the service in World War II and before, some of the white enlisters said that blacks needed to spell their Gibson name a different way, and that the other name was going to be reserved for white people.
Oh.
Okay, as well as some other spellings had to be spelled the way that the Caucasian enlisters ordered. Some spellings and birthdays on the census was the same way. In the early 1800s, as the slaves were freed, you will see all sorts of spellings. Gibson, Gipson, Spates, that's some of her mother's name. Spates, Spats, Speight, Speights, Prior, Pryor, and Prior, Prior, etc. Some family members, when they write the deceased obituary, and that's the importance of keeping up with the obituaries, also there may have been some misspellings. That is why it's so hard sometimes to find our ancestors. I know it's a bit complicated, says Harriet, but it's true, and she's saying that she hopes that it helps. And that's just some of the information that I have pulled up regarding how my name is spelled Gipson. A lot of my relatives spell their name Gibson, but we're all related. We can all trace our roots back to my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather, Rachel and Harry. And you know, before I finish, I just want to tell you there's a couple of things I want to share with you as far as, I guess, best practices or things that have served me well in researching my family. And some of these things, as I said, talking to family members and also talking to family friends, because a lot of times our elders have a lot of wonderful information that they can share with us if we just slow down and take the time to listen.
Right.
All right. I've heard other speakers talk about funeral programs, and those are so important, and also information about church membership and church attendance at the different churches that people have been members of, things like baptism information, auxiliaries that people were in. I've also had a really good result in looking at burial information. I actually purchased a book here several years ago that listed the information from the Wingfield Funeral Home. If anybody remembers the Wingfield Funeral Home, there's a lot of great information in there that is helpful to learning about our family. Local newspapers, and not just local newspapers, but state newspapers. I actually found an article about my dad when he was either just entering the military or getting out of the military, but it was in the Atlanta Daily World. Yearbooks, there is a resource that has that has Black College and yearbooks available to us, regional newspapers, of course census and military records, family papers like those deeds, those wills, even letters, even pictures. If you have pictures at your house or your grandmother's house or your mother's house and they're not labeled as to who they are, ask. Get somebody to label them, because we're not going to be here always. They're not going to be here always. But if we get the information and write it down, that is gold. That is invaluable. Also, libraries, historical societies like this one, and museums have information. Also, we have a wealth of things that are available to us online, but we also have the National Archives for the Georgia, this region that is located in Morrow, Georgia. I can remember when I first started out going there and looking at their microfilm and getting research assistance on my family. So that's an option that's available to us. And additionally, I just wanted to mention to you, I know that a lot of people when in doing research, and I haven't heard anybody mention it here, but a lot of people in doing research rely on ChatGPT and AI. And I think that's a mistake, because in my opinion, it is a mistake, because I don't think those resources, those AI resources, value the oral history part of our history. And they will discount and say that never happened, or this story about your grandmother never happened. Like, my great-grandmother is said to have tried to find her sister who was sold off to Alabama during slavery, and after slavery she made an effort to find her. Well, how do I confirm that in AI? I don't. There are other stories that can't be confirmed, but use the tool for what it's worth. I've used it. I've used it to write like an email to a library saying, can you help me find blah, 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 blah. Can you tell me before you print anything out, tell me how much it costs. That kind of stuff is great for. But as far as the substantive things that we are looking for as historians, and that's what we all are, the substantive, the important, the valuable things that we're looking for, I don't think AI is there yet. So I think what we need to do is use it for what it's worth. And
can I say this?
Yes.
In the climate that we're currently in our country, with AI being recently made available, it's not new. It's been around for a couple of decades. It's just recently been made available for the masses, but it does not value historical data about minorities. The information in AI is written, placed there, created there, based on the dominant culture perspective.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. It's no better than whoever put the information in there.
Yeah.
Now, it can go through that information
Right.
super fast, faster than anybody in this room can, but it's limited. It doesn't have everything in there, and it doesn't value
I was
everything.
gonna say, almost everything you see now on Facebook or whatever, people tear it apart because it's wrong.
It's
Yeah.
wrong.
I mean, the pictures are very distorted, very not wrong. So I hope that it does not stay around too long.
I think it's gonna stay around, but I think it's important for people like us to
Yes,
Know its value.
know its value and to say what its value is.
and there are too many other trusted resources.
Yes, yes.
I have another question real quick, is how's your mother?
My mom is doing better. You know, I'll tell everybody, she broke her ankle